Welcome, everybody, and thanks for deciding to spend the next few minutes here at Imperfect Heroes. And before we get going, I just want to remind everybody that right now we are working on our 5-day challenge on service. And so if you want to be a part of that, the link is down in the show notes and you'll be able to be a part of that. It's a lot of fun. It doesn't cost anything, but I think it really helps us get ready for the seasons that are coming up, right? So, and a reminder too that you can always catch us on Rumble at the Imperfect Heroes channel and on YouTube at Little Hearts Academy USA. So today I have an amazing guest, and it's been so much fun getting to know Jeff. So as we got talking, we just talked and talked. We just got along so well. We found out that his son is friends or an acquaintance with my nephew at West Point. So his son just graduated last year, and my nephew is a senior this year. And you know, it's just been fun. It's just been great. But Jeff, you have 3 boys,
Yes, I do.
correct? And Jeff Nelligan is an author. So I've got 2 of his books right here. So this one is 4 lessons from my three. Oh gosh, there 4 lessons from my 3 sons. And this one is a really like amazing book too. They're both great, but this one is called Your Kids Rebound from Pandemic Lockdowns and how we're going to help our kids rebound from that. And as a teacher who was
Mm.
helping kids go through that, you know,
Mm.
it was just so hard for them. And I taught kindy
Yeah,
kids, but just the loss of socialization and the
mm,
ability to communicate and look at someone in the eye when you're talking to them and all of those skills that are so important, were coming up. In fact, I was just talking over the weekend with a teacher that I used to teach with, and I help coach teachers too who have students that they're struggling with, and she was saying, "I need your help," but she's got a classroom of 13 boys and 3 girls,
wow.
and she said, "When I'm
Oof.
talking to them, it's like they don't even. It's like you're talking to air. They totally ignore you. They have no ability to even like sit for even a few minutes just to do a morning routine, just to count how many kids are there today." So we did some problem solving and stuff, but all of these I think are it's so much more than it was before the pandemic. You'd get a kid or two, sometimes that had been overly spoiled or whatever and didn't
Right.
feel like they had to listen to anybody. But now it's just in such great numbers, and so coming up with those strategies, can be really hard. So today, you are amazing, and we're going to have you back on talking about boys and raising boys. And I feel like that's so important. I feel like, um, we need to let our boys be boys, and
Yeah.
yeah, and encourage that. But with the holidays coming up and Thanksgiving is like just in a week or oh my goodness, it's just in a week or so. Um, we want to talk about how do you build gratitude within our kids. We know that living in gratitude helps them with their mental health. It helps them with managing stress. It helps them with valuing other people. There's just so many big things. So, Jeff, why don't you talk to me a little bit about, first off, just about what you have going on and how you help people. And then let's talk about that, how you built that feeling of gratitude with your boys.
Certainly. Jeff Nelligan, as DJ's pointed out, the author of those 2 books, 4 Lessons from My 3 Sons and Your Kids Rebound from Pandemic Lockdowns. I'm the father of 3, and all 3 are military officers. And it was when the last kid left for college. Again, DJ
Mm,
mentioned West Point, where he knows her nephew. I decided that I would sit down and write about, what I thought were the best qualities for kids to have uh, in this present culture in this present age, and that's how 4 Lessons came about. And the big emphasis there was on the the 4 kind of ground groundstones: personal conduct, building confidence, confronting adversity, and of course, pursuing ambition. And so those were the kind of four foundations of how the sons were raised. And then following upon that, as DJ has already highlighted pretty darn well, the fallout from pandemic, lockdown, school closures,
Mhm.
confinements, uh, the masking, the just the absolute turmoil that society went through for uh, little gain
Yeah.
whatsoever. And if you talk about gratitude, I'll tell you, DJ, how much gratitude did we have after about 1 week of lockdowns in March of 2020? Gratitude that we had formerly not had for a day where we could and our kids could walk out of the house
Mhm.
and get on a school bus and sit in a classroom, and we could go about our jobs without any kind of encumbrance.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, a week after we had that gratitude, it all ended. And
Yeah.
we were locked in our homes and away from our jobs and schools. So the whole idea of if you had gratitude going into it, you were able to understand that, I've got some basic fundamental gifts, and the lockdowns and the school closures are not going to change those. And indeed, for a parent, I would think, DJ, and you're a parent too,
Yes.
and the people who are listening to this, the gratitude begins the moment the child is born. How
Oh,
lucky are you to have this wonderful child that you know that you're going to be responsible for and be able to guide as long as you're alive? That becomes the foundation of the gratitude of being a parent.
yeah. And I think that's key for us as parents too, as we're parenting, is sometimes, our kids can be a little twerky and and they can be, boys fight, but girls fight too. And it's like, and they fight about different things generally, but it's still that tension that can come, or, when they're defiant or they're having their little meltdown, in the middle of the store,
Yeah.
or in church or whatever. And, and sometimes you're thinking, am I really still grateful? But we are. And I think, though, in those hard moments, we do need to really remember that we are grateful even for the hard moments, because those hard moments are opportunities for our children to learn, but it's also an opportunity for us to learn too. We learn about ourselves and we learn about our kids, and we can stand back and, without being angry about it, but it's a different tone of voice, and say, what went wrong here? And
Yeah.
evaluate, look at it and say, okay, I can learn from this. And so we can even become grateful for the hard moments.
No question. I mean, the trials is where you're going to get your most growth. And when you're in that situation you've just described, uh, there's two things you need. You need that grace and
Yeah.
patience. And that grace and patience is part of being a parent, is seeing the long game.
Yeah.
It's not a day-to-day slog. It's you're looking way down a football field and you're at the
Mm-hmm.
10-yard line on the other side. And you're saying, this is going to be day by day, yard by yard. And these moments will come, as will the successful moments.
Right.
And if you don't have that long horizon, that view, you're going to be absolutely wretched and consumed by these momentary lapses or
Yeah.
momentary uh, misgivings and scenes, and you'll never get to the other end of the field.
Right. And you're so right. And I love the football analogy. Of course, big football fan. But in fact, our whole family, if you didn't do football, you weren't going to really survive in our family real well. But so I'm the oldest of seven, and Danny was born 2 weeks before I turned 17. So I was just going into my senior year in high school. And I remember, though, when he started talking at all, like he walked around with a football all the time, and it would be 6:30 in the morning on a Wednesday. He's about 18. He's not two yet, and he's sitting in front of the TV, yelling and hitting the TV because he couldn't find football. He wanted football. So
That's great.
I love, yeah, I love the foot. And what does he do now? He's a high school football coach.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So, but I love the football analogy because as you're going down, marching down the field, it's not just do I have the strength to to make it all the way, but there are a lot of things that are in my way, mainly big football
Right.
players. But in
Yeah.
life, we come up against the defense, so to speak, as we're trying to march down the field. And so, how do we help them maneuver that and keep that positive attitude after they've been knocked down how many times?
Right. I would say there's two things. First of all, your football analogy, the way you talk about it, and and your son becoming a coach, I just love that.
That's my brother, but
Uh,
yeah.
your brother, I mean, that's
Yeah.
just the best. Um,
Yeah.
is that football is all about moving the chains,
Mm-hmm.
and moving the chains means that every day there's going to be a little success and maybe a larger success, and maybe there's going to be some setbacks. But that after a certain period of time, you've moved the change enough that you get that next chance because you've got the first down.
Right.
So you look at life in that kind of example, the idea of moving slowly, steadily forward,
Mm-hmm.
consistency, sustainability. The second thing is, yeah, your kid, your family is going up against that defense and getting knocked down. But the other thing that's happening is your kid's on that team, and the team is the family,
Right.
and the team provides the support. And frankly, it's good a kid gets knocked down. That's
Yes.
one of the major themes of both of those books, but 4 lessons in particular, is that the sooner your kid gets knocked down, the better, because no one gets a free ride in the world,
Oh,
not adults and certainly not kids. And the sooner that they hit that wall and that obstacle and can get back up and either get around it or get over it, the better,
mm-hmm.
because that just serves as a learning moment that they will encounter and gain confidence from for the rest of their lives. My kids went
Absolutely.
through them. I put them through this sometimes, that challenge, that
Yeah.
test, that task. And starting slowly, they became more adept as years went on meeting bigger and bigger challenges. And of course, now being military officers and doing what they do, the challenges come every day in the real
Right.
world. As we were speaking about earlier, not a college classroom, the deck of an aircraft carrier, whole different ball game.
Absolutely it is. And so as you have a child that has the confidence to look around and say, "Oh, okay, it may be a big problem or something that has to be dealt with quickly, but when they have the confidence that, I can handle this, let me think, and that thought process is going to go way faster than what I'm talking about. But,
Yes.
they think it through, they see a solution and they move forward with it. And so, and another thing that I think of is that, if there wasn't the defense that was working to keep you from moving the chain, so to speak,
Right.
without them, you're just running down the field. It's just a jogging trip,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there's nothing. And so you score, and what's the joy in that? What's the hurrah,
Right.
And so it's really been fun watching, the football season this year, and you'll see guys, they'll make a big play or whatever, and they're like, they're so excited. I'm like, you're a 32-year-old man, and yet you joy with them, right? But it's because of the opposition, because of the defense that's there, that makes something feel joy in gaining the achievement in
Yes.
have. And you may not make the touchdown, you may have just made the first down or just
Right.
move the ball further a little bit. And so we joy that. And then that's something you see, they get so excited about, they duped a tackle or whatever, and they're so excited. We can see that in our own kids and be grateful for the challenges that they're facing. And sometimes you want to give them the skills, and you've been really good. You talked about that in your books of giving them the skills, practicing overcoming some of these challenges and being independent and being confident. And so then when they actually are faced with the situation, they know what to do, right?
Right.
And they get to show this joy and confidence. They might not be dancing around like a football player, but maybe they will. And isn't that a great thing?
It certainly is. And, like we were talking about earlier,
Mhm.
you give them the challenges, you give them the tasks early on. A perfect example from the book, when my kids were about 7, about 5.5 and 4.5, we were in an indoor mall, and I pulled out my wallet and said, gave each kid a $5 bill. And I said, guys, go get change. And don't come back until you have the change. And don't worry, it's not a race.
Right.
And I let them go. And they came back, all three of them. One kid struck out at one store. Another kid brought back like 40 quarters. Uh, yeah. But the idea was, here was a real life task that they had to do on themselves. You mentioned perfectly the word independence. This is as independent as you're going to get with a 5
Yeah.
year old kid.
Yeah.
And we played this change the five frequently in all different kinds of places. And then we graduated. We'd go to a grocery store and I say, here's your list. You've got 35 items to get. Here's your cart. You go get them. I'll get the rest. We go to a restaurant or a 7-Eleven and we park outside, and some of these are in sketchy places. And I say, here's $20. Get these four things and come back to the car with the change. At an airport, as they got older, here's all the ticketing material. Go get us the boarding passes. We'll be waiting right here. And this is at the age of 9. So
Wow.
you continue to give these kids these tests of independence. And again, your word, uh, of independence, and then they rise to the occasion and they keep rising and rising. So suddenly, when they're in an unfamiliar position or in a little bit of an odd place where there's a room for panic, they don't panic. The perfect example, the youngest kid was at a shopping mall, a big indoor mall, with some very irresponsible parents at a birthday party, and the parents took 13 of the 16 kids and walked into a theater, leaving 3 other kids behind in the middle of a food court. And you can imagine the panic that these 3 kids felt. One of them was my son, 5 years old. But he remembered. He said, I told him, even when he was really young, I said, if you guys are ever at a big, and it came up at a college football game, if you're ever lost, you're too short to see anything. So all you have to do is look for that guy or that female with a stripe running down their pants, because it's either a
Mm-hmm.
policeman or a soldier. And that guy, just run up to that guy and grab him and say, help me. And that person will. Well, of course, my kid, that kicks in. So they've got these 2 kids who are, both of them are in tears. And my kid says, look for the striped pants. And finally, they find one after about 5 minutes. And of course, the parents are oblivious. They're in the theater watching the movie. And, the kid gets sorted out. But it works because, he understood in that moment, an unusual moment, that there are ways to get around this. And if you're
Yeah.
learning that lesson at 5, by the
Mhm.
age of 10, you can handle a lot. And by the age of 15 and then 18 and then 20, you're calm no matter what happens because you've
Right.
been through it so many times before.
Right. And I'll tell you, well, I wonder, was there ever a point where your boys looked back and said, Dad, I am so grateful that you put us in these situations, and now I know what to do. Have they ever looked back and said, that was a good move, Dad?
I will say that they have at times said, I'm glad I went through that,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of weird coming from a kid or a
Right.
young person, a teen or a
Mm-hmm.
young adult. That I'm glad I went through that, because I know now from this perspective of several
Mm-hmm.
years
Mm-hmm.
that it was the best thing that to happen. And the corollary, the thing that we'll mention afterwards, I managed to get through that. And someone that has that kind of outlook on life, that can look back at something that was pretty troubling and say, I managed to get through that.
Mhm.
Uh, boy, that's to carry that along with you through the rest of your life is just that, is like a steel rod.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
having that absolute um, again, confidence that, hey, something like that's going to come up again, but I have this muscle memory and this mind
Yeah.
memory of getting through the bad thing a long time ago. So maybe that's an answer to your question, that
Yeah.
kids would say, I'm glad I went through that.
Well, and two, you had a 5-year-old who knew to look for someone with the striped pants.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And it
I'll
was
bet
the darn,
the parents of the other boys, I'll bet they were pretty grateful that your son knew what
oh,
to do.
oh yeah, the two other kids were sobbing. I mean, they were
Oh
just in,
gosh.
massive
Yeah.
food court in a huge mall, and there's Koi Koi. It was Koi Koi, your nephew's pal, who
Yes.
just said, I know what to do here. My dad told me this a long time ago. Um,
Yeah.
and it got the kids calmed down, but it also helped that, he'd had two older brothers, so he wasn't in the way of losing it, because he had these two great role models ahead of him. But that's what happened.
Yeah. You just said something that just kind of gave me goosebumps, in that you said he had these two older brothers that were great role models.
Yeah.
And what a blessing, man, that had to be. And yeah, I've still got the goosebumps. But I mean, how great is that for having older sons that understand, and not always, they're always going to have their little disagreements and whatever. We're all human. And in families actually, the disagreements within a family are part of our natural progression in life. So
Yeah.
it's with the siblings that you learn to stand up for yourself, that you learn to negotiate and compromise and all of those things. And so, having your kids work something out on their own is not a bad thing. But for them
No,
to no, but for them to
exactly.
realize I'm setting an example for this younger kid, and to have Koi Koi be at a point where he can look up and learn from you, your wife, as well as older brothers. What a great thing that is.
Yeah, it is. And, eh, and as you said earlier, disagreements are good. Couldn't agree more. Because if you didn't have any disagreements with your siblings, what the heck's going on in that family, that everyone's just, you know, like a
I
zombie?
agree.
Of course you're going to have disagreements. If you're
That's just
not,
part of life.
that's wrong. You've
Yeah.
got to have disagreements. And when you have, anytime, I'll tell you, DJ, anytime I hear some of my colleagues, younger colleagues at work or in the community, they have a child. And the first thing I say is, have another, because
Yes.
that kid that you just had needs that companionship, that eternal companionship that comes from having a sibling, a brother
Yeah.
or a sister, and then
Yeah.
have more, because that family becomes tight.
Yeah.
And at the same time, a tight family, people get motivated. The eldest, and was motivated. It dragged along the second. It dragged along the third.
Mm-hmm.
So, in addition to the motivation factor, there was also the eternal companionship factor, which is essential.
Yeah. I agree. I have my youngest daughter. She has a one son, just started kindergarten this year. They've been
Wow.
trying and trying to
Yeah.
have another, and it just isn't coming. But it's nice that there are cousins and there are,
Right. Yeah.
friends, and she sent him to childcare, and went to work. But it wasn't just because she was going to work, but because with him being an only, he needed
Right.
that
Right.
experience of having to do all of that, but in a childcare type. And now he's in kindergarten and enjoying life.
Yeah.
So yeah. So what were some of the things then? I know that you were so deliberate in the things that you taught your kids, and I love reading about that. I just started last night on the 4 lessons from my 3 sons. Doot, doot, there it is. But but I know how deliberate you were, and it's like you had this parenting plan. And in fact, I just did a show a little bit ago about how important it is to have a parenting plan.
Yeah.
What are our values? How are we going to manage this? I feel like it's kind of like a constitution of the family because it's a living document. You may need to make amendments. Oh, we didn't think about
Right.
that one, because your
Right.
kids will always come up with something that's like, never expected that. And
Yeah.
so, but being very deliberate in the things. What are the things that I want to teach my kids? What are the values that are really important? So, knowing how deliberate you were, did you have specific things that you did to help teach them about gratitude?
Yes. As I said, as we said at the beginning, gratitude is just the foundation. If you wake up in the morning and you're not grateful for having the blood going through your veins, and there's
Mm-hmm.
something wrong. And that's got to be imparted to a kid early on.
Yeah.
We take too much for granted in this society. From the fact that we can turn on a faucet and water comes out of it to switching on a light.
Yeah.
Forget air conditioning and refrigeration and cars and airplanes and free universal schooling. We just take it all for granted.
Yeah.
I've been in a former job, I worked at the State Department, so I've been in about 80 countries. And I would say half those countries, you were talking about nations that 70% of their diet was bread. You were talking about nations that had no sewage systems, major cities, Lagos, Nigeria, or cities that to get aspirin was a day-long journey to find a pharmacy to get aspirin. So we take everything for granted. So gratitude begins immediately when you wake up. It's also the idea that you can build gratitude because you teach your kids, hey, your dad's humping it into a job every day, and sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
not easy. And you have everything you want and most of what you need. So realize that this just doesn't come for free.
Right.
And they got it early on. As I say, you get to a kid early, he or she will remember it
Mm-hmm.
forever. If you wait, the ages of about 12 to 14, average 13, is that place where if you haven't made those massive interventions and impressions on your child, it's doubtful that they're going to be able to take them unless it's shock treatment.
Right.
So that gratitude factor, is pounded home early and often, and
Mm-hmm.
the kids will respond.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things you brought up that I thought was so important is often when we're talking about gratitude, we're talking about being grateful for people, something that someone did for us, which is so, so, so important. So,
Yeah.
so, so important. But you also brought up another aspect that I think we don't really process as often as we should, that we flip a switch and a light comes on.
Right. Oh
It wasn't
boy.
that long ago that would have been considered magic and you'd be, burned at the stake.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, you're talking about virtually 6 billion, about, I would say, 5.5 billion people in this world,
mhm,
okay, don't have any electricity. They don't have any running water, and a good portion of them go to bed hungry, many nights of the year.
right,
And
right.
as I said, the Western world doesn't understand that, and my kids understood it real early on. And also too, you make an example of the real world in which you live. I hear high school kids today talk about the stress, and they're so tired, and school is tough, and their parents don't understand them, and their internet's too slow. You know, and I think, and I've always told my sons this, their grandfather, my father, at age
Mhm.
15, was working in a vanadium mine a mile below the surface of the earth in
Holy
the Sierra Mountains.
smokes.
And at 18, participated in the invasion of Okinawa. So an 18-year-old kid telling me that they're stressed
Mhm.
or they're tired, or their internet is too slow, or their parents don't understand them,
Mhm. Mhm.
is an absolute fantasy world.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
what I mean about the gratitude. My dad's down
Yeah.
was down in that mine so that my kids, you know, could go to West Point and the Naval Academy.
Right.
If they're not
Yeah.
grateful for that, they're zombies,
Yeah.
but they are
Oh, for
grateful.
sure. Oh, for
So,
sure. I know with my dad. So I grew up in Los Angeles. My dad was a professor at UCLA
yeah.
and electrochemical engineering. So he's total nerd. But it was so funny. I remember. So just a little sideline. He got his doctorate at Berkeley, Cal State Berkeley. And this was back in the early 60s. And I was in kindergarten and my I would come home and my mom would be crying and upset because there were a lot of the race riots going on back then and a lot of things. And my mom would be all worried about my dad. And I can remember asking my dad, are you safe? And he said, "Oh, I'm an engineering student. They don't care about us. We're nerds." But he every summer every summer he took my brothers and some of their friends, other adult dads and stuff, and they would hike a 50-mile segment of the John Muir Trail.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so and that was specifically to teach them, I mean, survival skills, yes, and
Right.
camaraderie and all of those things, but how to be dead tired and have to get up the next morning and build a fire and make something to eat so
Right.
you have enough calories to get you through the rigors of another
Yeah.
exhausting day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. You kids today, many kids and some parents labor under this misapprehension that things are tough, and they have
Mhm.
no idea what tough is
Yeah. Yeah.
because they take everything for granted.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. Well, I think of, so we lived in Las Vegas for 20 years, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. And we had a pool in our backyard and even a jacuzzi for part of it. Yes, in Las Vegas. And we had air conditioning. And
Yeah.
so it would be literally 117 outside. And we would have the air set at 80, 82, which sounds high, but when it's 117 outside, that is
Yeah.
very refreshing. And I would often think of how on earth did the early settlers of
Right.
Las Vegas even survive? Like, how did they move?
Right.
you know, if it got over 105, my body finally acclimated. I would just fine until 105. I just kind of shut down.
Yeah.
And I'm in the pool if it's 105. And so, you wonder though, like we have so many things. And when we think back on, that's one of the things I think it's so great. You've got these wonderful stories about your grandfather, in the mines and working so hard. And you have that knowledge and experience and stories to pass down to your kids. I think that's such a great thing to have as you look at the stories of, like, my grandfather was literally a lumberjack in the
Yeah.
Northwest, and my other grandfather on the Benyon side, he was raised on a farm and ranch in northern Utah, and just to hear their stories, to sit and listen to them tell their stories and pass those on to my kids, and it helps them not only get a feel for who they are and how they fit in the world, but it also helps them understand, like, we have so much
Yeah.
going
Yes.
on, you know?
Maybe it's something that DJ parents can take away from this conversation is
Yeah.
you've got to explain the history of the family. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
remember what your father or your grandfather or grandmother
Mm-hmm.
did or mother and
Mm-hmm.
say, look, kids, let me tell you what it was like in 1960 or in 1940. And
Mm-hmm.
to try and get through to the kid, well, you better get through to the kid. If you're trying to
Yeah.
get through to a kid, you're doomed. Uh, to get through to the kid that their life is so good, and maybe that somehow penetrates the kid's skin and makes them feel grateful.
Yeah, I agree very, very much. And so I think that encouraging them, and you do something now every year that kind of ties into this, encouraging them to have their own story that they're now going to be passing on. And so then
Yes.
we're gathering more and more and more information so that, further generations aren't losing the stories of,
Right.
how they first came to the United States. I've got a great
Yeah.
story on the Benyon side. And, all of these things, you're passing that down to the kids. Talk to us just for a minute
Mhm.
about what you do every year for your boys.
Well, every year I put together, and this is going to sound so way back machine and maudlin. I put together a binder that is full of pictures and news clips and paperwork from their whole year previous. And it's called the Year in Review. I started this when they were really young in junior high school. And I would include pictures of athletic events and
Yeah.
report cards and papers they'd written, events we'd been to. And every year I put this in a binder for them, and at Christmas Day, they received them. And indeed, in the book you're looking at, there's actually a picture of the three of them reading their binders, and
Oh, fun.
for Christmas not too long ago. And remember, when this started, I think the youngest was 6, and now the youngest is 24. So
Wow.
but they still find them gripping, as the picture shows. But it was a
Mhm.
way of looking at the year and saying, hey, this is what I did, this is what I saw, this is what I wasn't successful at, and not in the cloud, but right in their hands.
Yeah.
And so each year they've received this, and of course there's a whole collection of them. I keep them at my house because
Mm.
they're all over the globe.
Yeah.
And it was just a great memory that they could hold in their hands about, hey, this is what happened this year.
Yeah. I love that. And then they can look back and
Oh
as you
yeah.
said, they love having those. And once they get more settled down or they have their families, they'll be able to take those into their own homes and share with their kids. Oh, you're 6 years old. Let me show you my 6-year-old year
Right.
in review and
Yeah.
see what we did. It's
Right.
so funny. My oldest daughter, she's got I have 3 grandchildren out of high school. That is so wrong. But
Wow. You're too young for that.
I agree. But so her two youngest, though, she has a 12 and a 13-year-old are her two youngest. And they came across somehow an old diary, a high school diary of their moms. And I'm thinking, oh,
Wow.
holy cow.
Yeah.
But
What's in
what's in
that?
there?
Woohoo.
But they got a kick out of, oh, so and so's really cute, and someone talked to me today, and I hate this teacher, and I love this
Yeah.
teacher, and and they saw that their mom was going through a lot of the same things that they were going through
Right.
and having the same emotions. And I think it made it easier for them to come talk to her,
Yeah.
because they saw that. And
Yeah.
so that's really turned out to be, a great thing. And so I was really excited when I heard about your year in reviews and I just would love to promote that with any of our families is to do that and keep those things. And I like having them in a year binder
Yeah.
too. You can
And,
pull it
and
out.
and also too, DJ, something you can hold in your hand
Mm-hmm. Ooh,
and that is not in the web. When people say, well, all my stuff's in the cloud, I said, well, that's great. You know, when's
what
the
are you doing
last
with
time
it?
when did you look at the
Mm-hmm.
cloud?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
my
yeah.
stuff's right here, and you can turn the page and read it.
Right.
The
Well, and
original
then
thing.
God forbid, what should happen if everything gets hacked and we have an EMP or
Right.
whatever? It's all gone. It's
Yeah.
only the stuff that we're going to have. So, like the books that are important to you. Okay, now I'm getting a little woo woo, but the books that are important to you, you need to have them not on your
Yeah.
Kindle, but here, just in case such things happen. And it's possible. Is it absolutely going to happen? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
is there a chance? Yeah, there's a chance.
Of course. And it also, if you want to see something, it's right there in your living
Mhm.
room. It's not something you have to 75 keystrokes to get to. It's a living, apparent,
Yes.
solid, concrete document and document.
Yes. Absolutely.
So it's, as I said,
Absolutely.
it's old school and you know, but it's a great thing. It's crazy to be an old man sitting there before Christmas at the kitchen table with scissors and glue and scotch
I want a
tape.
picture of
You
that.
know, oh my gosh, and just piles of stuff. Thinking I can't. These kids are 23 years old. What's going on here? It's crazy.
But they're going to continue doing amazing things and accomplishing great things and things that you're going to want to make sure your grandkids will know about their
Yeah,
dads. And
exactly.
so you are actually already, I don't think, do you have any grandkids yet?
No, no,
Yeah, I
I
didn't think
don't.
so. Yeah, but eventually, I mean, so you're doing things right now that are building relationships with those future grandkids.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So today you're raising grandkids that aren't even here yet.
Right. I mean, they'll be able to see the binders from their dads from
Yes.
20 years ago, 25 years ago. Right.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. Well, I gosh, as last time we talked, we could talk forever. But um so Jeff, why don't you tell people about where they can find you and get your books and
Sure.
all of that?
Yes. Jeff Nelligan. My website is www.nelliganbooks.com. My Facebook page is Jeff Nelligan Books. My Twitter account is at Resilient Sons.
Love that.
Instagram is Nelligan_books. And of course, I'm on LinkedIn, just Jeff Nelligan. And all these platforms have posts about the books that DJ is happily and I very graciously showed to you. And the most recent, obviously, being Four Lessons from My Three Sons, the second edition.
I love it. I love it. And amazing. I know everyone's going to be so surprised, but all of that information is going to be down in the show notes.
Oh,
So
I love it. I
just
love it.
shoot down to the show notes. They're one click away. And so and it doesn't matter what format you're listening on, whether you're doing a podcast format, and we're on, I pretty much all of them. If they were not on one, it's very minor. And we're also on YouTube and we are also on Rumble. And so, you can find me just DJ Stutz. If you do that, you're going to find me. And you'll get all of that. So just one click away. So Jeff, before we go, I always ask my
Certainly.
parents or my parents, my my guests the same question. And we know that there are no perfect parents, hence the name of the
Right.
podcast. But
Right.
how would you describe maybe just a successful parent?
Great question. And you know what? It ties up virtually everything we've talked about over the last 30
Mhm.
minutes, DJ. The perfect parent, however perfect they are, is the one that teaches his kid, her kid, to build relationships with the world.
Mm,
It's not the parent that's seeking to build a relationship with a child.
mm,
It's the one who seeks to build those relationships with the world, the people, the events, the places, the things all around them, because that's where that kid is going to end up. And the kid, he or she, must be able to navigate that world with confidence
right.
and good conduct and high character.
I love that. And that's an original answer in what, 120 something episodes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's an original answer. I love it. Thank you so much for that. So,
You bet.
Jeff, thank you once again for being a part of this and being part of our history at Imperfect Heroes. And I just want to remind everyone that you can always find us on YouTube and Rumble if you want to look at our beautiful faces. And the videos tend to be a little bit longer than the podcast. So it's just how editing works out. And so anyway, I just encourage everyone to come back next week. We are talking about service. And so until next time, let's find joy in parenting. Bye, guys. Wait, what is this? Roman is bigger? And who's the author? DJ Stutz. Where do I get this? On Amazon. It's available now. It makes a great Christmas present. Bye.